hospital pedagogy. Andre is currently recording our meeting, and I hope also everyone in the Zoom context can understand me. I prepared slides in German for today because I thought we would be much more German speakers up in here, but we will translate that stuff for you. It's also not that hard. Today, our topic will be the pedagogical and anthropological aspects of students turning to patients and having to visit a hospital school or being hospitalized in general. And as it shows in the literature concerning this topic, that switch or that students turning to patients, that over taking of a hospital setting over their regular school and ordinary life has quite the impact on their not also well-being but also health journey, and as well of course their school life, and yeah, how they are treated in school. Just gotta find my mouse back. Here it is. Well, the ISB, which is a Bavarian office for for research and quality of schooling here in Bavaria, says that a school for the sick, which is a term I do not really like, but I have to deal with it. A school for sick that is shown in green here is characterized as a so-called Durchgangsschule, which basically could be translated into a school for people who are not there all the time, but they hopefully switch back to their regular school at one point or another. Those schools for the sick are characterized over a few specific turning points and turnarounds as well. Mainly that the students are sick. Sounds plain, but it has quite the effect on schooling, on pedagogical implications and anthropological applications, as well as ethical ones. Sickness could be defined as a rapid change of lifestyle, which is what is shown here on this first point. And for students who are maybe not hospitalized, but students who have to be schooled as they are sick, the results are maybe not terrible, but it has quite the effect. As I said a few times now, there is few to no spontaneity at all. We can all stand up and jump around, and well, if I wanted to go down to one of the vending machines right now, those 4 floors, and buy myself a drink, I could do that because I'm, well, as far as I'm concerned, relatively healthy. But maybe if I would be sick, or if I was sick, I couldn't do that. I would need assistance, or I couldn't do it at all. Yeah, that's one point. Another is that also their future in the education system is unsure. In Germany, it is the case that if your grades are too low, you are not getting transferred over to the next school year. You have to repeat it, and that, of course, prolongs your stay in the education system, which can have a negative outcome later in life. And sickness makes all of that quite unsure. I actually had a colleague when I was in school who got cancer, and she still managed to. She was schooled at home then, which is regularly forbidden in Bavaria and I think in Germany. Also, ich weiß, Frau Schmidt, wissen Sie da was? Ich glaube, in Deutschland ist es komplett verboten. Homeschooling is forbidden in Germany usually. She was homeschooled then because she had this illness that she had to fight, and she still managed to make to get her A grades with all of us. She didn't have to repeat a school year or something, which was, well, quite impressive, very impressive. If I recall it correctly, she still studies at this university to this day. I think she became a medical doctor, if I recall that correctly. Haven't seen it in a few years. Well, there's also the danger of a so-called information deficit. The students, as well as teachers and hospital pedagogues or school social workers, or even the bureaucratic apparatus of the school system, might suffer from a lack of information concerning the student themselves, or then turn patient themselves, the sickness that they battle, or even how they should be treated during this specific state of life they are in. And something which gets pointed out in the literature that you would find on Moodle, or maybe we can send it to you if you want. One thing that is especially important when discussing pedagogical and anthropological moments of students turning to patients is actually their siblings. I found it quite interesting when I read the papers for this session today, and it is something that gets pointed out that siblings of sick students turn patients, I should start to abbreviate them STP maybe, that sick STPs siblings are actually under a lot of pressure, because they not only still have to maybe visit school themselves, maybe even the same school as their siblings, but they also have to deal with the fact that one of their family, or one of their siblings, which is siblings usually are close in age, is battling an illness that might be fatal in the long run. Hopefully not. So it comes down to an integration, a process that is especially relevant when dealing with the fact that students have to switch from a regular school to a school for the sick, or even maybe they just have to switch to a hospital and cannot be schooled at all because their illness is such a rough one. Relevant for that would be an interdisciplinary cooperation between not only school, e.g. school teachers, or school social workers, the bureaucratic apparatus, but also as well with doctors, pedagogues in the hospital, the nursing staff, and such things, and of course with parents or near relatives. It all comes down to something which the German-speaking psychology community calls Beziehungsarbeit. In English, it would be relationship work, working on and with somebody. And the ground, or the base of this working together moment would be that we establish as pedagogues or psychologists or nurses, doctors, whatever, a relationship with our students turned patients, we could think about how that relationship should be designed in this special case. I would say it should be based on truths, on a eye-to-eye relationship, and of course as well. Yeah, I forgot the last half of the sentence. That opens up the question: what is the role of teachers / hospital pedagogues in the situation of students turning to patients or turning into a hospitalization? We see a rather big model up here. This graph, which I've taken from the ISB as well, shows how we can make a room or design a space that makes it easy for students to, especially to finally come back to their regular school after they are treated in a hospital, or maybe even schooled in a hospital. It all comes down to their regular school, which is shown here, their parents or people who in a familiar context care for them, the student themselves, and the hospital or staff from the hospital, doctors, psychologists, hospital pedagogues, nurses, and all that. And this model, which or you see, shows is a circular motion. So they each have to talk to one another, and we can start basically. We could start here with the regular school. In Germany, we call it Stammschule, which is plain translation, just regular school. The regular school, and then the regular school will have to talk to the parents first. The parents will, of course, have to talk to their own child, which is the student turned patient in this case. And then they had to talk maybe together, even all three, to the hospital and the hospital staff. Some minor points you can see in those boxes here. Basically, what I just told you on the slide before this one. Well, any questions on that? Great. What you can see here is something the ISB, they designed this graph. The ISB managed to kind of transform into a circular motion what would regularly be a network. I chose this one. I liked it because I did a philosophical one on that. I thought when thinking of networks, I first think of a spider web, and I don't like spiders, so I didn't choose a spider web as a metaphor for this network. I asked the AI to generate me an abstract network, and it generated this one, and I quite liked it because it has those glowy points, which to me symbolizes, I didn't create it, the AI did, but to me it symbolizes that networking is a good thing. On each of these strands, you can find at the end a glowy point which could better the situation for our student turned patient. A German social work scientist named Nowak wrote a paper in 2022 in which he explained social networks. Social networks, not the ones we all know and spend too much time on, not Instagram or I don't know, man. I only have that one. What he calls social networks are real social networks. Networks you create, you maybe enjoy not. The networks you thrive on, or maybe networks could also bring you down, which would counteract my glowy network I showed you a slide before. We have a message in the chat. Ich teile den Bildschirm doch. André, ich teile den Bildschirm doch, oder?
Ja, alles gut, Chris.
Passt, super, okay. Danke. Well, concerning social networks, Nowak total or evaluated from literature that dates back to even the early 20th century, sociological and philosophical literature, by the way. He evaluated that mainly comes down to persönlichen Netzwerken, personal networks, to institutional networks, and I added the school for the sick and us as hospital pedagogues up here. And yeah, you see, I pointed out the question marks because I'm not quite sure what to make up with that, but I think we can approximate that in the next 30-35 minutes or so. I'll start with the personal networks. Nowak said that personal networks are characterized by how reachable they are, how anchored they are in your personal life, how tight. Frau Schmidt, wissen Sie zufällig gerade, was Dichte heißt? Was wäre denn Dichte im Englischen? Oh, this density, dense. How dense they are. Danke. We are a team effort now. How dense they are, how wide they are, how far they reach, and also just their content. What kind of network or what kind of elements are composed or comprised into your network. And lastly, how directly you can reach or affect your network. Do I have to I'll just choose a random example, which is characteristic for Munich and its surrounding area, is looking for the room to live in. Ms. Schmidt in the back is laughing because she might know the struggle. Looking for a flat or a room in Munich is not the easiest thing in the world. It might be the hardest thing in the world, actually. And it all comes down to, most of the time, whether I have to call some people I know who might know somebody and they might know somebody, or if I don't know any people, then I never find a room. You can also, next point, how long your network lasts, how intense it is, and how often we use it. Concerning intensity, it is quite, I found it to be quite interesting staying in this looking for a flat or looking for a house, even context. I moved out of my parents' home last year. I started this job there at the university, and I was looking for a flat in a mid-sized town in the northeast of Munich. And I had quite the experience with the intensity of my network because in the city I was looking for, I didn't have any network. I had or I still have a rather I would say good quality network in my hometown, but I moved 15 minutes east. And then I called or I used all the apps you can get on your smartphone for looking for a room to stay or a flat. And one night or one evening when I was in Italy, actually, a woman called me and she asked me if I would like to visit her, and she would show me the flat she offers for rent. And then the woman said to me, "Oh, I saw on your profile you are a scientist." And I jumped the train. I fucking jumped it. I was like, yeah, I am a scientist, of course. I run around in a white, you know this, what's it called in Germany? We call it Kittel. I run around a laboratory all day. She didn't know that I was like interested in value education and sustainability, and I write stuff about ethics. She wasn't interested in that. She just thought, oh, that guy's a scientist. Concerning the intensity of my network, she thought that guy's a scientist. That guy makes money enough to pay rent, and he's also intelligent. And I wouldn't usually do that, but I jumped that train. I wouldn't do it again. Or I would again, maybe if I needed another flat, but I usually don't do it in my personal life. I don't all the time swing around the scientist flag. I find that to be arrogant. That's for personal network. My landlord is cool though. She was very impressed by my scientific research. Next are institutional networks. Those are usually networks we are not personally invested in as individuals, but they are their logic comes down to a punctual, so once a time, or a longer or prolonged cooperation between actors, which could be like NGOs, governments, companies, such things, and they can they can reach from a rather local or regional circle, maybe city of Munich or Free State of Bavaria, all of Germany. They can reach far out from this very local, very regional area to Europe, or even be global. We in this room are a very stunning example of being global right now. Gotta admit, I really enjoy it. And we also have the ability in an institutionalized network of something which in German is called a Netzwerkverbund, which would be networks next to networks next to networks that could intertwine at one point or another. Gesundheit, we say in German. Bless you in English. In Bavarian, we say Helfter Gott. Frau Schmidt, kennen Sie Bayerisch? Okay. For our thought experiment or our practical experiment as well of being hospital pedagogue, the question I ask myself now, or a few hours back when I prepared this session for today is where do we see ourselves, where do we see ourselves as hospital pedagogues and as well as the school for sick people as a whole in the personal networks and the institutionalized networks. At which glowy points, so to speak, do we intertwine with others, or do we intertwine with a certain company or a maybe even government? Nowak, which I mentioned a few times now in this session, Nowak called that a Sozialraumorientierung, social room orientation. In English, I think there's a better word for it. And this orientation on the social room is comprised of 5 principles. And Nowak, as a social work researcher, says it is not only a description. We not only describe social networks social networks. We not only describe or can describe social networks via a social room orientation. It's not just an analysis, but we can use it to help clients, students, patients, whatever. And those 5 principles are: first, the orientation on the interests and what the patients, or he called it clients, want, because it comes down, just for explanation, in the German social work science or scientific community, people that need social workers are called clients. In a medical context, they would be called patients, and not to be confused with a German psychological context. If I go to therapy, I am called a client as well. Although the question must be raised whether I am a student, whether I am a patient or a client when I visit a therapist. That's German. That's German in all its beautiful complexity. Second, a social orientation on the social room of a client is based on activating the social network of the client through their own initiative. Social workers try to, move their clients so that they, by themselves, take steps to better their situation. Which brings me to the next point. Third is an orientation on their resources. Which resources does their network offer? Do they know somebody who has a flat? Do they know, I don't know, a doctor? Somebody who might lend them money or something? And that brings me to number 4, which is Zielgruppen- und bereichsübergreifende Arbeit, or in English, a social room orientation means that we, as social workers or pedagogues, try to not only focus our work on just the social work sphere or the pedagogical sphere, but we reach out and work with others to better a client's or a patient's situation in our case, which sums up number 5 as well, which is cooperation via networking. What I would like to do now, and maybe people at home on the screens can do it by themselves, but we can do it here in this room together, is what I would like to think about with you is if we imagine, or if we take what we've heard now and think how we would use this new knowledge we just gained for a patient or a student turned patient, or a student who has just turned to a patient. How would we use the network that they can offer as students, and how would we use the network the hospital or the hospital school offers, and how would we use our own network if we wanted to make the switch from regular school to hospital school as smooth as possible? And maybe we should take into account when thinking about that, which role the hospital school, as I already said, we as hospital pedagogues, and also social frames in general have, which impact they have on that. I would like to get into a discussion on that, and maybe if I had a pen, I could write on this blackboard here. We call it a Tafel in German, and a blackboard in English, which is quite funny because it is not black. It's white. What I could do is I'll take this. I'll take this PowerPoint here, and we could collect it on that. Maybe I can. So, yeah, you can find more on that in the ISB paper. What I would like to do now is share my screen again, and maybe we can have a thought together. Andre, can you see my screen again?
Yes.
That's great. Well, let's have a think, I would say. I'll take one of those speech bubbles. Where are they? Speech bubble, speech bubble. Man. Well, I'll take this one. And I can write something into it. Let's think about it. First of all, I personally would say, if we, as hospital pedagogues, get to know a new student who has just turned into a patient in our hospital school or in our hospital in general, my first thought would be to kind of interview them. Now the question is, what could I ask them?
Hospital school.
Yeah. Maybe they are lying in their bed. They have some kind of illness, and I come in and I say, man, my name is so and so and so and so, and I'm a hospital pedagogue in this school here. Maybe I would just have a small little nice talk and try to get to know something about their network. I would say it's kinda an interview. Let me add that. It's kind of an interview. Andre can add something as well. Which activities he or she likes? Yes. I would say maybe ask them about their family.
May I say something?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, of course. I think it would be a good idea to do that in a playful way. Otherwise, maybe the student or the child might be a little shocked in this particular situation in which he or she is in. So I think it is important to do it in a playful way. So let's say if you, for instance, like in German or English, you can let him or her draw questions, and then also choose whether to answer the questions or not. So an interview sounds so serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tomo. In the reality, in the Christoph, I think that when they say interviews, that sound like a formal interview. But
Yeah,
what are
formal.
talking? It's like when you are in a table with a puzzle, for example.
Yes, exactly.
Let's
Wonderful
switch that up.
possibility to do Anführungszeichen, this question to them. Yeah,
Yes.
when they have this time that are not formally, and I got many information with puzzle, for example, with the students. It's I think he would like say like this about not this formal interview that we know it.
Yeah. The kind of warm-up game or something like that.
Yes.
Did you hear that? A warm-up game. Andre and Miss Moore just said that we could have a warm-up game with a freshly turned patient, which I find quite the idea. Andre said that maybe we could do a puzzle together or just some lighthearted a game during which we as hospital pedagogues can ask some questions that do not seem to be that relevant to them, but are very relevant to us. So, for example, the question about their family, I think, is very important because we also might get to know which jobs their parents have, or maybe they don't have their parents anymore, or maybe some people, or maybe they have many siblings or siblings with a great difference in age, or maybe a twin. That is all something that might be relevant for us. I would add next, asking them about family. I maybe even ask them about their regular school visit. Yeah, about their teachers, about the principal of their school, their classmates. Sie brauchen sich nicht melden. Oh, yeah, whether he or she likes or liked school up till now. I got to make that one larger.
May I add something else?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe those are all, of course, the questions are very interesting for us and are good questions in a particular way. But I think maybe it's easier to get all the information we want if we ask things like about favorite color or best friends, things like that. And in my experience, the children start to tell you then a lot more than only answer the particular question, and you don't have this this attitude of an adult to ask like an investigation, but it's more the playfulness that's in the foreground, and I think that's very important because the situation is traumatic somehow for the children.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So I think I would start with just like questions that don't seem so serious, and in my experience, the children start telling you a lot.
Let me write that down. Non-serious questions.
Maybe if you want to put it like that.
We know non-serious and open questions that lead the child, or might be adolescents as well, to kind of get to talk.
So you show your interest in the person and in what, yes, and then they start, as far as I can say, that they start to tell you a lot of things. And they answer the questions, the serious questions we have on the other speech bubble, without you having to ask it.
Yeah.
Not asked for.
I make that one smaller. Fully digital today. Well, it doesn't have to be beautiful, just has to be to serve the purpose. Yeah. Could you repeat that? I didn't. Oh, no.
Each student prefer to be visited by the teacher in the hospital.
Ah.
When?
Ooh. Oh, what have I done here? Oh God. I'm a digital native. We're running out of space. That's a great question. That brings us to something I was just about to get out into our discourse. Ask them whether they would like to be visited by their school teacher. You said one other instance? School teacher or? School teacher. I'll just add them. Doctors, therapists, maybe nurses. Well, nurses. I do research on the ethics of nursing and the didactics of nursing. Well, nurses, they are an integral part of the healthcare system. They will get to know some nurses, and nurses usually are the unsung heroes of the healthcare system, which is my personal opinion. That brings us to the institutional network, and this is something I think, coming down to what Ms. Moa said a few minutes ago, we might run into the occasion that the patients are young enough to not really know what kind of institutional network they have. When I was 10, no, when I was 8, I was hospitalized once. They thought I had a brain infection. No, brain, skin. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Let's say they thought I was dumb or something. They thought I had a certain brain-related sickness, and I was hospitalized. And if one of the nurses would have come in, or even a hospital pedagogue, and would have said, "Okay, my boy, what kind of institutional network do you have?" And I would have just sat there and would have said, "I don't know, man. Where's my mother?" And I think adding to that what Ms. Moore said a few minutes ago, I would maybe use the same approach of playful, non-formal questions for their institutionalized network. That could come down, oh God. Well, that could mean that we ask them whether they institutional network, I would call it that. Network. That could mean we ask them about a bit more in detail about their school, something you already said, how their school was or is structured, how many classes they have. Classes, how many teachers in the German we call it the secondary stage of your school life, which is up from the age of 10 to 19. You usually have much more teachers than before. In the primary school, you only have one generalized teacher and maybe a teacher for religious education and one for musical education. So you might have maximum of 4 teachers during your school year. And in the primary stage, secondary education, you might have, I think, 10 to 12 different teachers, how many subjects do you have? Jetzt weiß ich nicht, Frau Schmidt, Sie sind Sonderpädagogin, oder? Nicht Grundschullehrerin. Okay. Wie viele Fächer haben Sie? Das heißt, Sie haben auch ein das heißt, Miss Schmidt ist a special needs education teacher, and she is able to teach students from the age of first class 6 in Germany and up to the fourth class 10 in Germany years of age, and she is able to teach nearly every subject in school. Apart from, I think, sports and English. And of course, religious education, because in Germany, religious education can only be taught by teachers who have who are granted the ability to teach religious education by the church. I studied religious education for secondary education, but I am not allowed to teach religious education actually, because I didn't do the test up until now, because I was done with my studies here at LMU and directly got the position I now have, and I never needed to make this to write this test, which would grant me allowance of the church to do religious education in schools. If I ever switch careers and become a teacher at last, I would have to visit that or do that test finally, and maybe I would be like 10 years older than the students who are doing it. Just for an explanation concerning how many teachers do you have, that might be of relevance, especially when it comes to which subjects they enjoy. Because that might tell us something about to which teachers in their school they have maybe a more deeply of a relationship. Anything else? Andre, do you have an do you have an input for me? I'm thinking about institutionalized networks right now.
When you talk about institutionalized network, I think it's good when you talk about Germany, because I know you have many troubles here, but we have a strong network that it's what we want build in Tanzania, for example, not just between schools, hospital school and family and the regular school for the child, but around doctors or social workers. But this is things that they don't have established in the country, for example. The NGOs, associations.
Oh, that's great. Maybe adding to the institutional network, also like NGOs that are concerned with the sickness um, that the student turned patient is now facing. I'll give you a basic example. My girlfriend is a celiac. That means she can't eat gluten, regular flour and stuff. Regular flour, so no pretzels for her, no noodles for her, no anything for her. And she's a celiac, and as in Germany it's called Zöliakie, Glutenunverträglichkeit, and in English they just say one is a celiac. And there is a organization in Germany, the DZG, German organization for celiacs, and you can register there, and then you get a certain magazine sometimes, and nice ideas for what to cook if you can eat anything, and what kind of research is newly done on celiacs, and that would be something which would have to be considered when talking about the institutionalized network, institutional network of patients. Maybe that could be something which betters their experience in the hospital, or then back when they are back at their regular school, or maybe at home even. Because one thing I didn't show on these slides before, but would have to be taken into account as well, would be that the more and more the healthcare system shifts from a stationalized care approach to a ambulant care approach, which means that the German healthcare system is lacking. German healthcare system is not the best in the world. It's not the worst by far, but it's not the best in the world. And we don't have enough staff in German hospitals to care for each and everyone for as long as it's needed sometimes. And that generates a shift back to something which is called ambulant care. So people get maybe they get treated in the hospital, and they are not completely back to their former health, and then they get sent back to their home, which generates the effect that more and more sick students are visiting regular school again. And I think that NGOs and also GOs, governmental organizations, like the ISB, which I talked about before, that they are creating much more of an impact these days than they had in former days, when people were getting treated from start to finish at the hospital. Because most of us are not doctors. Most of us do not have rather well-expressed health literacy or medical knowledge, so that they can treat themselves or get treated by their parents or stuff. And that is something that has to be taken into account when talking about the institutional network. Kam da gerade jemand rein? Ah, nice. Would somebody like to add anything? Great. We started now with a we have, or in our minds, we have gotten the process started now to whether or how we could help a student from in their shift from regular school and their regular way of life to a to visiting or staying in a hospital, visiting a hospital school, maybe getting taught bedside. My question now would be, what could be our next step? We had a first talk with them now. We have much more information on them, their parents, their institutional network now. What could be our next step? We could maybe we can make a nice little graph here. Here, gray is our first step, and our second step, I'll just make it blue. I like blue. What could be our next step? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the next step is hospital.
Mm-hmm.
There, we have to move to the hospital there in order to get the experience of how the student or the patient is going to be handled there.
Mm-hmm.
That's I wanted to talk about that. But
Mhm.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question because we are going now to start that kind of pedagogy in our country.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some challenges which I ask myself.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can find that the patient or student, they are parents, they afford what I can say, all costs even to give their children to continue with the school.
Mm-hmm.
So how could I motivate the parent to stay with their student?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's I would say that's a very sad system error. Because thing is, if I get sick, a doctor kind of formally notices it, and I don't have to work. But only up until 6 weeks. After 6, I'll still get my salary from the university. But after 6 weeks, I get something which in Germany is called Krankengeld, which is significantly less than my regular salary. And that might lead to the effect that many parents, although their children are really sick, still have to go to work because they could not lead their way of life, or they could not survive without the money. And I think it's a big system error. We would have to, or the government would have to jump in there. But the government says, so what? We are paying their Krankengeld for them. That's, I think, it comes down to that motion, which is rather sad and kind of could make one angry. I am glad that I didn't have to experience that situation, and I hopefully never will. Does that answer your question? Okay. Well, yeah.
maybe have a question about him.
Yeah.
Because his father, maybe if the parent refuse to connect this native, how can you do?
Well, I can only speak for Germany. We have oftentimes we have data security issues, but if you are a hospital pedagogue, ideally you are sent in by the state, so you have many options to choose from, and can just best solution possible is you can just call all those people up and say, listen, I am so and so and so and so, and I am the hospital pedagogue of so and so and so and so. Would you please give me all the information I need? Would you please, can we have a talk? Yeah. And that would be, as you said, that would be, I think, the next step, get to know the environment. I would just say, get to know everybody. Get to know everybody. And then the process is started. Then we are just getting started, because the next step, I'll give it a different color in a second. I'll make it the LMU green. Our next step would be to make, or to kind of use the network, use the information and the network to make the transition as smooth as possible. And in our case, as well, to see whether we can continue to school the patient, or to to teach the patient. That's a better word. That last part, to see whether we can continue to teach the patient, I think that would have to be very closely discussed with their regular school and their and also the parents, because we, as hospital pedagogues or hospital teachers, we are dependent on their regular school, that they have to send over the information and the materials, and what did their classmates learn today, basically. There would have to be a process that repeats every day for every subject, with every teacher. I talked about my my old colleague from school at the beginning. She had the very best of luck that the teachers at my old school, at the secondary education school I went to, they were very cooperative in that. They were like, oh my God, that girl is sick. Let's see how we can help her. And they sent all the material to her, and they were available via telephone if she needed them at certain hours of the day and stuff. And that, I think, is our main, or could become our main obligation as hospital pedagogues in the end, that we are the coordinators of this process. So far, so good. Let me most beautiful slide I ever made. That's great. Well, in the end, it all comes down to, once again, as we discussed last week, it comes down to a definition of health. Health is a state of complete mental, physical, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Enjoying the best possible state of health is a fundamental right of every human being, without distinction of race, religion, political belief, economic, or social position. When I when I get sick and I have to be treated in a hospital as a student, my social position significantly lowers. Significantly. And that makes up for a further decline of health, in my opinion, because health is something that has to be thought as an integral thing. As the WHO says, it's not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, and that especially gets a bit important when we think about students that may be chronically ill. So it is our obligation as hospital pedagogues to make sure that they can, even during their disease or during their stay at the hospital, in the hospital school, enjoy the best possible state of what they experience right now. So there's something in the chat. I am the host. André, farewell.
Yeah, thank you.
See you next week.
See you.
Well, it also kind of brings me to the end of this session. Are there any questions left? Well, this is the literature I used. When are you guys back going to Tanzania? So you will return next week. That's great. I love that. Well, those are the references I used, and Andre's Andre's notes still. Lastly, I want to share this quote with you from Martina Hornzel. It's nearly 10 years old, but I think it's not even a sentence. But she says that school is an important as a perspective for life. I'll leave you with that. Thank you. No need to applaud. So, wo ist denn hier mein Zoom-Meeting?
I agree with that statement.
Yeah, me too. I loved that when I read that. Ich verabschiede mich auch vom Online-Meeting. Wenn Sie irgendwelche Fragen haben, entweder gerne jetzt noch oder per E-Mail oder so. Nix, dann sage ich Dankeschön und Tschüss.
Schön.